Welcome to For Yore, the show where we bring you interesting people and compelling stories. We hope you enjoy this episode. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and share with your friends.
Welcome to For Your Lore. I'm your host, John Adamick. It's my pleasure today to introduce to you Erik Rintamaki. Erik has made an amazing discovery in the North Shore of Michigan's Upper Peninsula, and that has brought him worldwide acclaim and appearances on shows such as the History Channel, the Smithsonian Channel, and the Discovery Channel. It's my pleasure to welcome Erik Rintamaki, discoverer of Yooperlite. Erik, thanks for being here today.
Hey, how's it going?
Well, we're so glad. I had the pleasure of meeting you. It was August, I think, late July or no, it's late. It was August of 2019. I'm sure of it now because I went to a wedding. And as we were driving up there, we were visiting family in Lower Michigan and driving up, and I had my wife and my mother-in-law, and I said, I've got to make a stop. And so we went off the course of the Sini Stretch Highway, and we stopped off at your place, and we had arranged to meet. And my family was absolutely amazed when they saw what you discovered.
Awesome.
And to meet you.
Yeah.
You're famous.
Yeah, I've come a little bit away since 2019.
Yeah, so Yooperlite. Tell us about your discovery, if you would, and maybe we should start with, because some of our folks are not from Michigan, maybe start with what a Yooper is.
Okay, so a Yooper is a person from the UP of Michigan. So Upper Peninsula, UP for short. So it's a moniker for the people of the Upper Peninsula. They're Yoopers up here, right? It's kind of a slang term, but we like it. Okay, we like being called Yoopers. We take pride in it. It's something you relish up here. Okay, so my story actually starts before me. My story actually starts with my grandfather, Viljo.
Okay.
He came over from Finland, and he was in the military, and he ended up settling in Newberry, Michigan with my grandmother, and they ended up buying a jewelry store, and it was called Max Jewelry. Everybody called my uncle or my grandpa Viljo, they called him Mac, short for Rintamaki, because saying Viljo was too hard for a lot of people.
Okay.
You know, it's a Finnish word. He was from Finland, and so he owned a jewelry store. So he would go out to Lake Superior to look for semi-precious gemstones called agates, and I'll show you a couple of those right now. Okay, so these stones right up here, these are banded agates. That's one my father found, one I found, and a couple of recent purchases.
Those are beautiful.
Yep, and then these are Yooperlites on the bottom. But my grandfather would go out to the lakeshore, and he would look for Lake Superior agates. He'd bring them back to his shop, and he would make them into bolo ties and bracelets and belt buckles and all the stuff of the time. Well, back then they didn't use the safest practices when working with stones. They used silicone carbide wheels. A lot of it was dry, wasn't wet. He ended up dying from lung cancer from the chemicals for working on watches and working on stones. Wow. So he died when my father was 10, but before he died, he got my father into being a crazy rock hound looking for Lake Superior agates. And my dad, all through the 70s and 80s, every time my dad had a day off, we lived in Newberry, we'd go 30 miles north, right up to Lake Superior, and that was our big thing. Going agate picking every weekend. Anytime the snow would make a 6-foot circle where there was a dry patch, in the springtime, we'd be out there looking in those little patches, looking for agates. And the way my dad really got me into being a rock hound was when I was 9 years old. We went up to Pine Stump Junction, and that's where it turned to dirt. And after we got done eating lunch, my dad had thrown me the keys to the 1970 International Scout, 3 on the tree, stick shift, everything. And he'd be like, all right, it's your turn at 9 years old. So it made it a blast. And that's how I learned all the back roads, all these old logging trails and logging roads that are now four-wheeler trails. And I learned all these beaches. I didn't know the names of any of them. I still don't know the names of any of the places I go to. Other people call them other things, but I just know where to go because of take a left, take a right, take a left at the big tree, that, and then you're at the beach, you know. And that truck was so much fun because if you wanted to put it in four-wheel drive, if it was a whole bunch of sand, you had to get out and turn the lugs in the front, you know. So it always made me a diehard agate guy. And that was my solace, to get away from people, be all by myself, out on Lake Superior. I wouldn't see anybody the entire day, all just me. That's it. It was my connect with nature and just listen to the waves and be free for a while, you know, unstressed for my job or whatever's going on.
Right.
And I loved it. So I've always been an agate picker. And no matter where I go, no matter what state I go to, I'm always looking down at the ground. I'm always looking for rocks, you know. And I'm going to say about 10, 11 years ago now, a friend of mine, his name is Mark Bowen. He was the lead singer in my band for the longest time. And I've always been the guy that all I talk about is rocks all the damn time. So he was always like, oh, would you stop talking about rocks? Stop talking about rocks. Well, he went out to Whitefish Point. He found his first agate about 10 years ago and created a monster.
Oh.
He just, all of a sudden he's, you know, like snorkeling for them and going out every day looking for them. And the next thing you know, he's going to agate shows and stuff. Well, a lady gave him a collection of agates to sell for her. And he came back and he's like, Eric, you're sitting on a fortune. Your rock garden is worth so much money. You're rich. And I'm like, no, I don't sell agates. I don't buy agates. I look for agates. It's just my fun. If you want one, I'll give you one, you know. And I always gave him away as presents and that kind of thing. And he's like, Eric, listen, you are the perfect person for selling agates. He's like, you're a great salesman. You're good at pitching things. Because I always did all the booking for the band that we were in. And he takes $4,000 and goes, spreads it across the table. He's like, listen, this was my commission for selling that lady's agate collection this past weekend at a rock show. He's like, that's my commission. He's like, you could do awesome at this. And I'm like, dude, I don't know how to sell agates online. I don't know how to do any of this. He's like, listen, this is what you got to do. Go to eBay, buy a couple of agates. You know what to look for. He's like, I don't know what to look for. He's like, you know agates. Just buy stuff you think is really good, and I'll teach you how to sell it. There's this site on Facebook, and I'll teach you all about it. So we did, and I was like, well, I'm not going to spend more than $10. So I bought 10 agates for 99 cents a piece, free shipping. And 10, 12 years ago, you could get them that cheap. Now it's 10 times at least that for what I paid. Okay. So I buy a 99-cent agate. I put it up. My very first one sells for $10 at auction. So I'm like, whoo, now there's something to this. So then I do it again, and I do it again, and I do it again. So I turn my $10 into $100. I take my 100, I turn it into 1,000. I take my 1,000, I turn it into 10,000 after a few months. And so I'm like, okay, I got this little nest egg. This is my start a little side hustle, side business. So I start going to agate shows and gem shows and Minnesota, and going to Moose Lake and the Brainerd show. And there's a thing called the agate swap, and it's in St. Cloud, Minnesota. Well, I went to the first one there, and I ended up bringing a couple $1,000s with me, and I went to an auction, and just I won so many stones at this auction, and it was great. The prices were fantastic, and it really set my business up. Well, after selling agates for about a year or so, the ones from our area, we call them EUPs, Eastern Upper Peninsula agates. The ones from our beaches up here are different. They're naturally tumbled by the beach. They're rounded, and we get some really specific colors up here that they really don't get much in other places, but we get them more here. And we call them EUPs. And I'm starting to get a fortune for these EUPs. I mean, we're getting prices that people are getting for like Fairburns out in South Dakota and stuff. So they're getting harder and harder to find. Well, up here in the EUP, jobs are hard to come by.
Yes.
So what do a lot of people do that don't have jobs? They get a ride up to the beach and they go to the beach all day looking for agates so they can come sell them to me. And then I got to be the middleman and then go sell them again.
Yep.
So I'm like, well, I need to cut these pickers out. I need to be the one going out there and getting these agates so I don't have to pay the up, you know. And at the time, I had a shortwave light, looked like a little box, kind of like this. Okay. But it had a cord came out, you plugged it into the wall, and you had to be about, I'd say about that far away from it in a really dark room. And out of my thousands of agates that I have in the house, 36 of them lit up green. Okay. Kind of a dull green. Some of them were bright green. And I thought, wow, perfect. This is how I'm going to do it. I was working at the casino at the time, running the poker room, and I got off work at 2 o'clock in the morning. Well, by the time I got up at noon, 1 o'clock, all the pickers had already been out from 6 o'clock in the morning until noon. They'd already picked for 6 hours. So anything fresh from a new storm or whatever, they're getting it already. I thought to myself, I need to come up with a way to look for Lake Superior agates that no one else is thinking of. So I thought, I'm going to go on eBay and I'm going to find one of these lights, but I want to find a flashlight for them. And I want to take it out to the beach and look for agates. I want to find glowing agates on the beach. I was dead set, 1000% it was happening in my brain. So I get online and all the lights are huge. They're like 2 or 3 foot long, giant shoebox with a great big giant handle, had a cable coming out of it, going to a backpack that you had to have a car battery in.
Oh my God.
To run the thing. And it was like $1,500. And like my wife would kill me. I just can't, you know, because I'm living paycheck to paycheck. I'm doing the side hustle just to make ends meet, you know.
Sure.
And I was like, you know, I'm gonna be Ghostbusters out on the beach if I get one of these things. So I typed in UV flashlight. And at the time I didn't know there was a difference between shortwave and longwave.
Sure.
Now I know so much more. Shortwave is at 254 nanometers. Long wave is at 365 to 410. Well, the crappy lights are the 395 to 410 lights. They have lots of LEDs. They're unfiltered, so you can see all the LEDs in the end of the flashlight. So I type in UV flashlight and boom, up comes mineral detection light. It's a silver flashlight. It's really small, takes 3 AAA batteries, has 7 LEDs in it. It's got a picture of a green fluorescing agate in the ad on eBay, $7 plus shipping. I'm like, perfect. Wife can't get mad about this. It's $7, takes AAA batteries, perfect. So I load up with a bunch of AAA batteries. I go to the beach after work. I go for 4 nights in a row. I don't find squat, nothing, zilch, nada. So then I went home and I had a little discussion with my wife. She's like, you need to quit going to the beach. If you're not finding anything, you're just wasting money, you know? And I'm like, I don't care if it takes me a month. I'm going to go every day until I find something on that beach that fluoresces. I know it. There's a stick, a frog, there's something, you know? And then I just wanted to kind of prove her wrong too. And I end up going out the next night at 2 o'clock in the morning till 4. And at 4:15 in the morning, out on the eastern horizon, I can see the sun starting to come up, because this is May and it comes up pretty darn early in May.
Right.
And I'm just like, oh, the sun's coming up, the sun's coming up. So I get down on my hands and knees and I start scanning the beach, and boop, boop, boop. I find 3 little stones, and all 3 of them were smaller than this, just tiny. One had little snowflake pattern, one had lines through it, and one had little stars all over it. So I didn't know if I had found 3 different things.
Wow.
See, like this one has lines in it.
Yeah.
This one's got kind of snowflakes on it, and well, that one's kind of snowflakes too. But some of them had little stars on them. So I didn't know if I had found 3 different things. See how these all look different?
Yeah.
And so I didn't know if I had found 3 different things. I didn't know if I found all the same thing. I didn't know what they were, but I screamed the loudest F yeah you've ever heard in your life out in the middle of nowhere. all by myself.
Wow.
And I jumped in my truck and did 90 miles an hour all the way back town. I'm like, I'm going to get on Google. I'm going to find out what these are. Google is going to know what these are. I know it. I know it. I know it. I just had this feeling that Google was going to be able to tell me exactly what these were. So I get home, I get on my computer, orange fluorescent minerals in Michigan. Nothing. Fluorescent minerals in Michigan. Like 4 or 5 things that were nothing like what I found. So then I typed in fluorescent orange minerals and I found sodalite that was the same color, but all the sodalite online in daylight was blue.
Okay.
Most of it fluoresced kind of a yellowish color, not orange like these. And all the stuff online, if it did fluoresce, the entire stone fluoresced. There was no patterns like these.
Okay.
And all of the pieces online that I saw looked like broken concrete. Not one of them was a rounded, glaciated cobble like these. As you can see, these are they're very worn. They're not sharp and jagged. They're very smooth. They feel like they came out of a tumbler already. All the rocks on our beaches basically feel like they've already been tumbled.
Yes.
And so I didn't know what I had found. So I went to rock shows and gem shows. I took them to a geologist, a gemologist. I took them to LSSU University. I took them everywhere. I asked 1,000 different people. I got 1,000 different answers, and no one gave me the correct answer. There was a lot of guesses that were close, but nobody could tell me. So I started posting these online and didn't know what they were. And I have a friend, his name is Gabe Reyna. He is a geologist from California, and he works for the mining industry out there. Well, he had done a lot of buying, selling, haggling, trading of Lake Superior agates with me. And so we had built up a friendship. He said, Eric, why don't you send me a few of those stones? He's like, I have a lab and I can do a little testing on them. He's like, I'd like to eyeball them first though. And he's like, I'm reading some books about your area. I have a suspicion that these were brought down by glacial activity from a place up in Canada. And would you mind sending some of those stones to me? I'll do a little testing. I'll try to figure out what you have. So I sent him 8 pounds of stones. A couple weeks later, he calls me back. He's like, Eric, I figured out what you got. And this is what he said to me and how he said it. They're a nepheline cyanite rich in fluorescent sodalite brought down by glacial activity from the Colwell complex in Ontario, Canada. I'm like, what? Start over again, slow down, tell me each word. A nepheline cyanite. I was like, stop. So what is a nepheline cyanite? He said, well, a nepheline cyanite would be a piece of granite, but it has 0 quartz or just very minimal quartz in it. He's like, it's much softer. It's only about a 5 to a 6 on the Mohs scale. And while this stuff was cooling in a magma chamber, fluorescent sodalite leached up through it, and that's where you get all the different patterns. So if the rock cracked during an earthquake, that's where you would get the lines in it, because that's going to take the easiest, least resistant path.
Sure.
And then if there was air bubbles, that's where you get the little stars and the snowflakes and all these different patterns. So he was explaining to me how these different patterns were formed. And so I'm like, Gabe, so you're telling me that this rock is a cyanite, correct? He's like, correct. I said, I can't sell a cyanite. He's like, why not? I'm like, it sounds like a suicide pill. I was like, what do I call these rocks? And he's like, listen, I looked it up. There's no occurrence of nepheline cyanite rich in fluorescent sodalite anywhere in Michigan's geology. So what I want you to do is come up with a name, where you're from, where you found it, the beach you found it, your first name, your last name, whatever you want, and put LITE on the end. He's like, the way they usually name the fluorescent minerals is they wait for you to die and then they name it after you. He's like, but you probably don't want to wait till you die to be able to sell a few of these rocks. I'm like, no, of course. I'd like to, be able to sell some of these things. So I go to the beach with my brother-in-law and we're trying to come up with names. And he's like, just call them sodalite. I said, no, sodalite's found all over the world. I said, I want something that says, where they're from and what they do. And when I said that, it popped into my brain like a lightning bolt. Eric, you're a Yooper.
Ah.
Yooperlite, because before that it was Erik Rintamaki, Michigalite, Muscalite, Vermillilite, Northern Light, Superior Light. And I'm just like, nothing's got the pop, nothing's got the pizzazz. It needs to say where it's from and what it does. And when I said that, it was literally like getting hit in the face. Yooperlite. And I said it out loud. My brother-in-law was like, that's dumb. And I'm like, no way, it's genius. And I'm so glad I kept it. You know, and at the time, when I named these back in 2017, I did not know that you can find them in 13 different states and on all 5 of the Great Lakes.
Wow.
I had no clue. I didn't know how widespread these were. I hadn't been on any expeditions up to the Coldwell complex with Lake Superior State University yet, nothing. And I was so new to all this, you know, and it basically fell in my lap. So what happened? I start selling them as Yooperlites in the fall of 2017. And I go to a place called the Fluorescent Mineral Mart on Facebook, and these stones go crazy. All the collectors want one. This is something new. This is different. This is right here in the United States. You don't have to go to Iceland. You don't have to go to Greenland. You don't have to go to Finland. You don't have to, you know, get $10,000 worth of permits. Anybody can go do it right here on the Great Lakes. Yep. So, I mean, I picked a number. I think it was $32 a pound, and all of a sudden, boom! Everybody's just buying them like mad. I can't keep them in stock, so I'm buying them from anybody that'll go picking them for me. And I end up selling some to these guys from the other end of the Upper Peninsula. And there's 5 gentlemen, and they're a group called the Michigan Mineralogy Project, and it's headed by Kelly Laughlin and Sean Carlson. And they sent me a message and said, hey, Eric, we're from the Michigan Mineralogy Project, and we look for new species of stone here and rocks and minerals here in Michigan. And we add them to the book, The Mineralogy of Michigan. We think you may have found something new for the state of Michigan. Would you mind if we did some testing on these stones that we bought from you? We're going to have to destroy them in the process. And I said, you can shoot them out of a cannon. You can throw them into Lake Superior. You can do whatever, blow them up, TNT, do whatever you want. They're yours. Have fun. So about a week later, they emailed me again, Eric, we really, really think you found something new for the state of Michigan. Would you mind writing a paragraph about how you discovered these stones? Would you mind if we published you in a book called The Mineralogy of Michigan? Would you mind if we put you in a peer-reviewed journal? And don't say anything to anybody. And I'm like, I'm not keeping this a secret. I'm telling everybody I know. Right. I'm trying to make this a thing. I'm not trying to keep it a secret. So I don't hear from them for 8 months. And in May of 2018, I get the mineral news in the mail. And right on the front, new find of fluorescent sodalite in Michigan, Yooperlites. And that was the first time Yooperlites was ever used in print for a publication. And I was credited with the 386 mineral discovered here in Michigan. And both Gabe and I got the credit for figuring out what they were. And a couple days later, I got a Facebook message from this couple from Grand Rapids, Michigan. How they found me, I have no clue. But they heard about Yooperlites somehow. And they're like, hey, that looks like a lot of fun. Would you take us out hunting? We'll pay for you to take us out. What would you charge us? And I'm like, I don't know. I was like, I'll have to buy the lights for you. And at the time, the lights I was using were like 30 or 40 bucks. And I'm like, I'll charge you 10 bucks a piece for gas, 50 bucks a piece. How's that sound? And they're like, perfect. I'm like, ha, joke's on you. I get to go out picking for free for a night because you guys are paying for my gas, you know? So I go to pick them up at the Brimley Hotel right here by my house. It's about 2 blocks away. And I pull in the parking lot and they're standing outside. And the first thing the husband, Cass, says to me is, listen, we both have conceal and carry. We both have weapons. So don't think you're taking us out in the middle of nowhere on Lake Superior, killing us, raping us, taking all our money and dumping our bodies in the lake. And I'm like, holy crap, city people. I'm like, what the heck? And they're like, no, we're just kidding. We're just kidding. We got them for bears. And I'm like, we're not going to see any bears. You guys are fine. So I take them out hunting. They have the time of their life. They're such awesome people. They were just joking with me. And they both found 25 pounds worth of stones first night out at the mountain.
Wow.
They both just had a giant bag full of stones, right? no problem back then. It was so easy. And I had never hunted the two-hearted, but I picked that place because I just wanted to take them someplace that I hadn't been yet. Because I didn't know if all the beaches up here had them or just a couple. So I took them to the mouth two-hearted, had a blast. Well, they told their friends, they told their friends, they told their friends. Well, then I get a phone call about 2 weeks later from a lady named Shirley Clemmer. And she asked if I would be willing to take 20-something people out for a group called Michigan Rockhound Friends. Well, Michigan Rockhound Friends are a bunch of retired people that every 3 weeks during the summer, they go do a rock picking adventure somewhere. They wanted to go agate picking or looking for Petoskey stones or fossils or whatnot. And they wanted to try this Yooperlite thing. So I'm like, well, I'll take them right back to Mouth of the Two-Hearted. We'll try it again. So at the time, I didn't have enough money laying around to buy 24, 25 lights, whatever it was. So I told them, I said, when you show up, you guys better have the money. Otherwise, I don't pay my mortgage this month and my wife will kill me. So I get there first thing, everybody's got the money, everybody shows up. Perfect. I'm happy, right? Well, right before we start, about 8:45, I give everybody their lights and I ask them, I say, hey, does anyone have an objection to me filming someone finding their first one? I want to film somebody finding their first one, especially if it's right before dark, so I can post it on social media. I wouldn't mind doing this for a living. I wouldn't mind hosting tours and, you know, making some money at it. That can be my side hustle instead of doing, you know, agate shows and stuff. So everybody agreed. We're not hunting for 5 minutes. It's just before dark. Shirley Clemmer, the lady that put the show on, starts screaming from about 100 feet away. So I turn my phone on. I go running over there. I'm like, don't pick it up. Don't pick it up. So I run over there. And I take a 30-second clip. Shirley finds this bomb. It's like bigger than this. It's a little taller. And about
I think I've seen that video. I think I watched that.
Yeah,
it's a great video.
It's had hundreds of millions of views. So I take this little clip. I don't think anything of it. I get home at 4:30 in the morning. I put it on my Facebook. I wake up at noon. It's got 3,000 views and 100 shares. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty good. You know, and all of a sudden I go from 20 something likes on Facebook to 100 something likes. I'm like, all right, that's working. Because the day before, I had a lady tell me that Yooperlites don't exist because she Googled it and she had 0 results.
Oh.
So I Googled it, no results, nothing. So I'm like, well, I got to change that. And so this video, it just ends up going absolutely viral. By the end of the week, it's getting millions of hits a day. I was the number 3 story on Reddit for about 3 weeks. It's still huge on Reddit. Got picked up by WeChat in China, Asiri TV in Japan, got picked up in Germany, France, England, New Zealand, Australia, every TV company you can think. And the next thing I know, I've got ABC, CBS, Fox, CNN, Forbes magazine, all these news trucks out in my driveway waiting to interview me. And I went from 0 to 1,000,000 miles an hour really, really fast. And I had no clue what was coming. And I ended up doing a bunch of interviews and setting up a website so I could sell stuff. And I started selling UV flashlights. And the next thing I know, I'm selling more flashlights than I am stones. Stones really dropped off and the flashlights really took off. So I started being a flashlight manufacturer now. So it's come a long ways. The lights have come a long ways in the last 4 or 5 years. And in the next year or so, they're really going to go a long ways. We're going to make some really big leaps and bounds. And yeah, that video just propelled things into the stratosphere. The next thing you know, I got contacted by PBS and they ended up doing a documentary. It was fantastic. It's all called Light Up the North, the Story of Yooperlites. It's free on YouTube. You can still watch it. And then on June 11th of 2019, I was doing a Yooperlite night picking tour at Whitefish Point. And we were on the harbor side over where the little fishing harbor is for the boats. And in June, it's the longest time of the year. So it doesn't get dark till 11:30.
Right.
So my people and I, we started about 11:30. it's about 1 o'clock in the morning, starting to get windy, starting to rain pretty good, really low cloud cover. I mean, like really low clouds. And it's getting super dark. And we're just like, okay, let's go. I had 3 people plus myself. I had Alice and John from Ann Arbor, a retired couple in their 70s, and a lady named Teresa in her 50s from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And I'm walking in the back with Alice. I'm next to the lake. She's next to me on the beach. We're going real slow, and we're in what I call just one more mode. Just want to find one more stone, then we'll get off the beat. And everybody does it on every tour I've ever done. Just one more, just one more. Okay, yeah, just one more, then we'll go. So Alice and I we're just BSing, talking, and going really, really slow. And the next thing I know, she's like, Erik, pulling on my coat. And I'm like, yeah. She's like, what are those lights back there? And I don't even turn my head. I'm like, it's just the ship going through the shipping channel. She's like, Erik, turn around. That is not a ship. So I turn around, and there's 3 lights up in the sky. One here, one here, one here. And they go, trade position back. And then poof, the one on the top goes out. The one on the bottom goes up where it was. Poof, it goes out. And then this one up there. And then whoop, another one appears over here. And then whoop, another one appears over here. And then that one goes out, and they trade position again, and off and on and off and on. And we're standing there watching them. And my girl Teresa and Alice are standing right behind me. And I start walking down the beach. And they just grab me by the back of the jacket. They're like, you can't leave us. You're our tour guide. And I'm like, come on. It's just lights in the sky. They're not going to hurt us. I'm not getting abducted. Come on. It's not aliens. And I'm like, okay, I'll stay with you guys. So I stand there for a good 10 minutes or so watching these lights. And I'm like, what the heck is this? You know, I didn't know if it was somebody with a laser pointer or drones or what it was. I had no clue.
Right.
And I'm like, it's pouring rain at 1 o'clock in the morning in the middle of nowhere. You know, there's no towns for 11 miles, you know, and they're moving so fast and doing all these, you know, trading position back. And I'm like, what the heck? And then I'm like, Erik, you're a moron. You have a cell phone. So I grab my cell phone out of my pocket and I go to take a video, right? Or take some pictures. I go to try, my phone's full. I have no room because I have so many pictures and videos of rocks on my phone that I can't even take a picture. So I'm sitting there at 1 o'clock in the morning watching these lights, delete in the rain, deleting all this stuff. So I delete about 12 minutes worth of space videos. Boom, I take a 12-minute video.
Wow.
So this video, I get the lights going 1, 2, 3, fading out, fading back in, 1, 2, 3, 2 lights, 1 light, 2 lights, 3 lights, 2 lights. Okay. And after about 7 minutes into my video, coming from my right, going to my left, here comes a 1,000-foot freighter called the Spruce Glen. Well, 2 of these lights drop right down above the water. And this ship's getting closer and closer and closer. I'm like, that ship's going to hit that light. And then poof, one of the lights goes out and it drops right above the water. And you can see all the water lighting up. And here comes this ship, and the ship goes right underneath this light. And you can see the big giant hatches on the top of the ship going lighting up orange as it's going underneath this light. So the light right above the ship, and you can hear us, we're screaming, it's going to hit the ship, it's going to hit the ship. Because we thought the tall part of the ship where the captain and stuff are, we thought that was going to hit, but it went right above it, gets right past the ship. And as soon as the ship gets by, whoop, another light appears, poof, this goes out, and then whoop, another one appears over here. And I got that all on video.
Wow.
All right. So there's a bunch of stuff happened after that goes along with the story, but it's a really long story. Anyways, I ended up getting contacted because after about 4 or 5 days, I toiled. I didn't know whether I should post this video. I didn't want people to think I'm out there doing drugs or getting drunk or something stupid or trying to do a hoax.
Sure.
I just didn't want people to think negatively towards my business at all.
Right.
Had the opposite effect, but at the time I didn't know that. So after 4 or 5 days, I watched this video so many times. I'm like, you know what? It's too good. I got to put it up. So I put it on my YouTube channel. The very next day, it gets picked up by the New York Post. They do a big thing about it. A couple days later, it gets picked up by a YouTuber called Secure Team 10. He's a very famous YouTuber about aliens, UFOs, conspiracy theories, all that kind of stuff. And then a couple weeks later, I get a phone call, and it's the Travel Channel from a show called Paranormal Caught on Camera. And they had seen my footage on the New York Post article, and they asked if I would be willing to do an on-camera interview and if they could use my footage. Well, you have to remember, this was right before COVID. So I end up doing the show, and it comes out on February 5th of 2020, right as COVID's about to hit.
Yep.
It's huge. I went from having, like, I can look on my website and I can see live who's on my website, who's not on my website, where the people are in the world, everything. And the first time that came on, I looked at my website. I'm like, man, my website's going crazy. I had over 3,000 people on my website at one time just because of that show. And about 2 months later, I end up getting a phone call from the History Channel. And they want to do an interview with me, and they want to use my footage for a show called The Proof Is Out There.
Okay.
So I'm like, of course. And they're like, well, we can't come to you because of COVID and stuff. And so I'm like, sure. So I ended up having to do kind of like this, but I didn't have quite this nice of a setup. I just had a cell phone, and they told me where to sit in my house and that kind of stuff. So they didn't use a whole lot of me talking, but they have this thing on their show where they have all these experts try to debunk my footage. Okay. And at the end, they say their conclusion, and their conclusion was that I saw an authentic, genuine UFO.
Wow.
Or UAP, whichever you prefer.
Sure. Yeah.
And so that was really cool. And then a week later, I filmed with Expedition X with Josh Gates, and they thought a different way. Theirs was kind of outside of the box. They weren't thinking aliens or UAP or UFO. They were thinking that because Whitefish Point is known as the graveyard of the Great Lakes, that there's more ghosts and apparitions and that spirits, that kind of stuff in that area because of all the shipwrecks. So they thought maybe what I saw was an apparition or a ghost trying to reach out from the other side. So that's why they came, and that my sighting was the whole reason they came here. And the editors basically edited out 99% of my stuff and focused on other things that they had done while they were here. So I'm kind of a small blip in the radar on that one. I wish I had the footage that they did, because they recreated my sighting and it looked absolutely amazing. It was really funny, and it really looked good on camera.
You've had amazing experiences with this. I mean,
oh God. And now, like, I do paranormal conferences, you know, and I just worked with Josh Gates again on his show Expedition Unknown. And I don't think I'm going to be on camera on that at all. They might just show Yooperlites a little bit, but I was basically just a guide to take them. Like, remember before I was telling you about how I know all these four-wheeler trails and old logging roads and everything else, and I know all these places. I'm like, Josh, I got the perfect place for you guys to go that doesn't look like anything else in Michigan. And I took them out to where the Duck Lake fire was, and there's all these dead trees that are all burnt and still standing, and then you got all these live trees that are 10 years old underneath of them. And it makes for a really, really neat backdrop. And he ended up renting my four-wheeler and my side-by-side from me for the day. And yeah, it was an amazing experience. And I got to work with him, got to meet Josh, the whole ball of wax. And that's kind of a little bit what I aspire to do. I've been in talks with Hollywood to have my own television show, and that's something I'm currently working on. Nothing set in stone yet, but I have a producer that wants to make a little show with me about me and all my adventures I go on.
Now, a little bit is available, Unlocking Secrets.
Yep. So that's a little bit like a taste of what I would want to do. So the first episode of that is on my YouTube channel, Unlocking Secrets with Erik Rintamaki. And that's just something I did myself. Me and my friend Gary, we put that all together. The first episode is all about Lake Superior agates. So I have my friend Mark over, and we talk about agates and what got him into agates, and we tell agate stories, and he's got some really funny stories. I have some funny stories, and we show off some really amazing stones because he has a really amazing collection. And then I think on the second and the third episode, it's all about fluorescent minerals like this green stuff here. Where's it at? Right here. The willemite and calcite from New Jersey. And I actually went to New Jersey a couple times and we filmed. We went on a private tour through the mine, all through places where the general public doesn't get to go. We got to pick stones off the belt from the very last day in 1986 of production. And I got to bring some of those stones home. And I'm going to be putting together someday a little mini museum of my own of special rocks, minerals.
Absolutely.
Like I'm big into metal detecting, like some of my discoveries that I've made metal detecting and that kind of stuff, you know.
Yeah, I really like I like the whole idea of looking for things that are not readily apparent, and living down here in North Carolina, early in our time here, I took my son out and we did some gold panning down near Troy and some of the other places, and the Reed Gold Mine, which was it's kind of interesting to me because the person who found the first chunk of gold that started the whole gold rush in the U.S. used it as a doorstop for several years because they didn't know what they had. And what I like about your approach, a couple of things. First of all, I like the fact that you're connecting people with your discovery. You're connecting a place that's important to you, which is your home area there in the Upper Peninsula. I find the Upper Peninsula absolutely breathtaking. It's very therapeutic for me to be up there. The people are amazing. I enjoy everything about it. I prefer to go in the summertime if I can, preferably after the bugs are done doing their thing.
June is no fun up here.
So when we came up, and this was one thing that really stood out. So we came up just 2 months or so after you had this experience, which I appreciate you sharing about. And I remember when we connected, I was like, hey, I'm coming up. We'd like to do something fun and unique. I'd like to surprise my family. And we're coming up for a wedding. Could I get a couple lights? And you said, well, yes. And if you're going to be passing by, I could meet you and talk a little bit and introduce you to Yooperlites. And I said, that'll be great. So I asked my wife and we surprised, I didn't really tell them all what was going on. And so we showed up and you were so kind to come out and you were showing us the lights, the Yooperlites, which I want to make sure if I get this right. Yooperlite is the name of the stone, the rock. And I'm not going to be able to say all that again.
Nepheline cyanite rich and fluorescent sodalite brought down by glacial activity from the Coldwell complex.
Yes, I remember sodalite and glaciers. But you also, your brand of is it what length of wave for the nanometer?
Okay, so all the lights I sell, okay, like this, these are all long wave 365 nanometer, and they all have a ZWB2 filter. So you see this black lens, you cannot see inside the flashlight. You can't see the LED. If I turn it on, you probably can. There, you can kind of see the LED. But these are all at long wave at 365 nanometer. So if you go out with a regular black light, a 395 to 410, it's going to be clear in the front and it's going to put off a lot of purple. You're going to try to take a picture or a video. It's just going to be a purple blob. It won't even look like anything. And you're going to miss about 90% of the stones with a regular black light. It's very difficult to find with those. And that's why I had such a hard time in the beginning. If I would have had one of these the first night I would have went out, I would have killed it.
Yeah. And so, several things stand out to me. I wanted to share with you, and I don't think I had, but after we stopped and you were kind of spent some time with us, and we ended up buying a second light because we were so impressed, and you gave us a couple stones, so we knew what we were looking for. Later, a couple of days later, my wife and I went for a day and a night getaway to celebrate our anniversary. We went up to the Copper Harbor area, the Keweenaw Peninsula, and we spent the night. It was this beautiful, clear night. You could see the Milky Way, and we're on this remote shore of Lake Superior, and just absolute solitude and beauty. And we're out there with we're looking down on the ground and walking around, and I'm thinking, wow, that's some deep water out there that's already claimed a lot of people over the centuries. I don't want to get too close to that at night because, number one, I've lost my sense of perspective, but we had the best time. And I thank you for helping us to enjoy connecting with that part of nature. So thank you for that, Erik.
Yep. See, I tell people all the time, my legacy isn't that I found a stone. It has nothing to do with how many flashlights I sold. My legacy is I've gotten people, friends, family out in nature, doing something fun, communicating with each other off the Xbox, off the cell phone, off the couch.
Yeah.
And if I can get every person that goes on the beach to pick up one piece of garbage that they see with the UV light, then I'm making the world a better place for the next generation. And getting kids into doing this is something I'm really big into. I've almost thought about starting some kind of foundation for kids to get them into fluorescent minerals. And I go talk at schools. When I go talk to a school, I don't care if it's 30 kids or 600 kids. I bring a rock for every single kid.
Wow.
And I give them all a rock and a business card, and I tell them, listen, if you get straight A's this semester, you tell your parents they owe you a $20 flashlight from Yooperlites.com, and here's how you go get it. So if a kid can get straight A's for a whole semester, they deserve a little flashlight.
I think so. So one of the things that stands out to me about your I guess approach to this, first of all, just being persistent. It was your fourth night you're out there, and you could have easily, I would have made it a couple hours in the first night and said, oh, okay, I'm done. And you're out there 4 nights.
Yep.
You researched, you had a plan, a strategy. You didn't know what you were going to find, but you knew that you had increased your chances of having some kind of experience.
I didn't care if it was a stick, a frog, a rock. I didn't care what it was. I was bound and determined to find something.
Yeah.
Something.
And then finding this and being willing to share it, and not just kind of we just watched Lord of the Rings, and the whole idea of precious and keeping that. It would have been really easy to say, hey, look what I've got. Nobody else has this.
Oh, yes. And listen, through all this stuff that's happened to me, I've met some really incredible people. And one of the people that I met, his name is Steve Arnold. He was on a show called Meteorite Men on the Science Channel. And I loved that show because they went all over the world looking for meteorites, and they'd metal detect for meteorites. And I always wanted to go do that. Okay. I always thought that'd be a blast. Well, I ended up getting to meet him at a rock show. He invited me down to his house. I went down and I stayed with him for a weekend on my way to one of my shows. And he sat me down and he's like, Erik, I have to tell you something. He's like, I know what the secret sauce. I know what the secret to your success is. And he's like, it's not what you think. I'm like, okay. He's like, you give it all away for free. He's like, you tell everybody where the gold is and how to get it. And he's like, if they buy a light from you, great, they buy a light from you. If they buy one from somebody else, that's fine too. You're still going to tell them where to go and how to do it. He's like, that's the secret to your success right there, is that you give it away for free. You don't charge people for a map, or you don't tell people it's $20 to know where to go. I tell everybody where to go.
Yeah.
And if you want a harder accessible place, I tell you where that is too, you know.
That's fantastic. And I like that, the way that your friend phrased that, and the the idea of giving. There's a book, Adam Grant, he's a leadership social scientist kind of expert. And his book, Give and Take, talks about the fact that when people give, they actually increase the size of their pie.
Yep.
And he's proven it through science. I don't understand the science, but I believe it. And I like that idea, and the idea of sharing now, because these people are going back and they're talking to their family and showing them the rocks, because that's what we did.
It's word of mouth.
Oh,
Word of mouth
absolutely.
and social media are so huge for me. So
Yeah.
huge.
Absolutely. So you've got the other thing that I really like is that you're looking at all these different ways that you can continue to do what you're passionate about and what you enjoy, and really make it perhaps reach the fullness of what you can with that. You've got your various appearances on major networks, streaming services. You've got your YouTube channel with millions and millions of hits. You've got Facebook feeds and reels and things like that. And so there's a lot of ways that people can connect with you, but you're also looking at new ways and bringing in new people. In fact,
Yep.
this was kind of an interesting thing for me. So there was, I don't remember the show, but there was a national show, and they had this kind of like bluegrass musician on there, Billy Strings. And I just discovered his music. I worked music retail for a number of years, and I was
Yep.
amazed. This guy's brilliant. And
Yep.
so I'm looking, and all of a sudden I see Billy Strings, Erik Rintamaki, and I thought, Erik Rintamaki's everywhere.
You want to hear a funny story?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to tell you my Billy Strings story. So I'm in my office a couple months ago. And when I'm in my office, phone calls don't come through. They go straight to voicemail because my phone works off the internet. So I go in the house, and there's a number from downstate, and I listen to the message after a couple hours, and the lady on the phone is like, "Hi, my name is Roxana Mann." She's like, "I'm trying to navigate your website. I want to buy something for my nephew who's turning 30, and I want to buy something custom for him, like a knife or a sphere or something custom." And she's like, "But there's one problem." She's like, "I am blind. I lost my sight back in 2008." And she's like, "I have to navigate your website by listening to your website." So she's like, "I can't find a custom tab anywhere to be able to order something custom. Would you mind calling me back? I'd like to get something for my nephew. And just so you know, I'm serious. My nephew is Billy Strings, the Grammy Award-winning bluegrass artist." So I'm like, okay. So I call her back, and I have a 2-hour conversation with her. She's been to 47 countries. She's done all this stuff, right? And she gives me a budget, and she wants me to put something together for Billy Strings. So I make him a knife with a Yooperlite knife handle. I make him a Yooperlite sphere out of a special stone that I found. My buddy made him a necklace that looks like a skull. And I gave him a bracelet that Satoshi from Japan had made for me. A whole bunch of rocks and a guitar pick made out of Yooperlite, and a whole case with a flashlight and a charger and holsters for everything. And his aunt ended up bringing me to the concert in Kalamazoo. I sat next to her at the concert, and we were VIP front row, and Billy ends up dedicating a song to his aunt Roxana, and made her cry and everything. And it was probably the best song he did all night. It's just an a cappella gospel song, and I'm not a big gospel music guy, but it was amazing. It gives me shivers just talking about it.
Wow.
And after the show, we ended up going back and getting to meet Billy Strings, and he was just blown away. He was making all these Lord of the Ring references to it, and it was just amazing. And so we've made plans now. I'm going to take Roxana and Billy and his uncle and his fiance, and I'm going to take up to 6 people plus myself, and we're going to go do a Yooperlite pick sometime this upcoming summer. So I know he's going to go for sure, and his fiance was all about it. They were super excited, and I was like, this is a perfect, you can get away for a day or two. Nobody's going to know you're here until you're gone, kind of deal. Nobody's going to bug you up here. There's no people up here, so
Well, that's a really wonderful story. I feel I'd be remiss if I didn't at least offer, just because I like to support people, if you find yourself one short on that trip and need somebody to hold the gimbal with the cell phone, because you need somebody to document you with them, I'm willing to come up.
Yep, my camera guys might be a little mad at me.
No. I'll do the behind the scenes of copying them with the cameras, and then you can have that for your documentary later.
There you go.
Erik, you have been a real fun conversationalist and shared all kinds of amazing. I don't have stories like that to tell. I think it's really interesting what you do, how you do it, the way that you impact others, and quite frankly, the way that you're bringing the beauty of Michigan's Upper Peninsula to the world through your work, through Yooperlites. And so for that, I commend you. I thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we go? And I will have links to your website and some of your exceptional content for our viewers to watch.
Yeah, my thing is, I have tons more stories, and I could never fit them all into one interview. So one of these days I am going to write a book. I've been contemplating it for a long time, and I've had a bunch of people ask me. So someday maybe I'll get around to it and write the whole story down somewhere.
Absolutely. I think that's great. I look forward to reading it. I'm a writer myself, and I'm actually involved with a group of Upper Peninsula authors. And so,
cool.
Yeah, I'm writing a novel that takes place in the Upper Peninsula. And so I've been going up and doing research. Now, I think I showed you earlier, but this is just to this is my wife and I last summer up at the McCormick Wilderness area. The pictures I have from our Yooperlite trip to Copper Harbor, I didn't take many photos at night. So I need to get back up, and maybe we can schedule a trip with you, go up to Whitefish Point or something. And I'll take turns watching the ground for the Yooperlites and the agates, and watching the sky for some UAP.
I tell you what, since all that happened, I do watch the sky more. But now I just notice more stars in the Milky Way and shooting stars and that kind of stuff. I think that was a once in a lifetime deal, and I don't think I'm ever going to see anything like it again.
Well, I'm glad it happened to you, and I appreciate you sharing it with us, Erik. And I look forward to continuing our conversation.
Interesting people, compelling stories.